everyone. Yay! There is a place on the coast of Portugal where people come to watch giant waves. Why? Because they are beautiful and maybe a little scary. So, this was supposed to be a pretty video. My husband filming me on that beach. The waves don't look that big in the video, but they were. I walked what felt like a safe distance. They didn't look that dangerous from there. I was watching where they landed, confident I'd see them in time and step out of the way. Well, I didn't. I noticed it too late. I fell, and it was surprisingly hard to get back up. You could say I was inexperienced. Except I grew up by the sea, I'm a trained lifeguard, I'm a very good swimmer. And still, it wasn't enough. Now I can't click it out. So, can you please just move to the next slide so we can continue? Thank you. By the time you can clearly see the wave, you're often already inside it. Burnout works the same way. We think we'll recognize it early and just step away, but usually we're already in it. And that's the bad news. The wave is already here. This is not a rare situation. It's not a few people struggling somewhere on the side. It's almost half. 48% of employees globally report experiencing burnout right now. So the question is no longer whether burnout exists in your organization. The question is how severe it is and where it sits, because it's not evenly distributed. How many of you are managers? The highest burnout rates are among managers, up to 60% depending on the study. The people expected to keep everything running. According to Gallup, managers drive up to 70% of their team's engagement, so their burnout affects others a lot. These leaders are not only responsible for addressing burnout, they are also affected by it, and sometimes it looks like this. The wave is already here. So what can we do about that? Let's build our 3-step anti-burnout framework. First, we need to understand it. So what is burnout actually? WHO defines it as a syndrome resulting from chronic workplace stress that has not been successfully managed. And the most important part here is not stress, is not successfully managed. But that still doesn't tell us how burnout looks in practice. So let's break it down into 4 dimensions of burnout. Burnout doesn't look the same for everyone, but it's usually a combination of a few patterns. The first 3, exhaustion, emotional distance, and reduced efficacy, come from how burnout is commonly described in research. And I'm adding one more that I found incredibly useful in practice: the identity gap. Let's look at what each of them actually feels like. Exhaustion is not just being tired. It's when your energy stops recovering fast enough for the life you're living. You wake up tired, even after a full night of sleep. Small decisions suddenly feel expensive. Even good things start feeling like one more demand on the list. Exhaustion really feels dramatic. It feels like slowly losing access to your full range as a human. Emotional distance is when you start feeling further and further away from things you used to care about. You used to genuinely care about helping people grow. Now, every difficult conversation just feels draining. Things that used to feel meaningful start to feel annoying. Burnout doesn't always reduce output. It often reduces how much people care about the quality of what they do. And what looks like disengagement is often our brain's self-protection, not laziness. Reduced efficacy is when you stop feeling effective, even when you're working all the time. You solve problems all day and still feel behind. And research is starting to show that the more we rely on AI, the less personal agency we feel, even when we are more productive. And the tricky part here is people often respond to it by pushing even harder. The fourth dimension is the identity gap. It's the growing distance between the professional you wanted to become and the person you actually find yourself being at work. This is something I've been hearing a lot in my work recently, especially from engineers. The same goes for managers. Do you feel this way too? The thing about the identity gap is that sometimes the hardest part isn't exhaustion. It's not recognizing yourself and how you work anymore. So this is what burnout actually looks like. And most of us don't experience just one of these. So this is step one. You can use these 4 dimensions to map burnout risk for yourself and your team. So the next question is, why does it happen? One of the most useful ways to understand the reasons for burnout comes from the job demands resources model. And at its core, it's actually very simple. Every job has things that require sustained effort and things that help you perform, recover, and grow. Demands are everything in your job that requires sustained effort. They cost you energy. This is your regular workflow, workload, challenges, and the things that just drain you. In tech, it often looks like context switching, cognitive load, always on communication, and the need to constantly adapt. Resources are everything that helps you perform, recover, and grow. They don't remove the work, but they change how costly it is. Things like proper tools, clarity, support from your team and manager, and whether your work actually feels meaningful. All of these build engagement and make the same work feel lighter. And notice, none of these remove the demands. So, how are demands and resources related? Demands and resources interact. They shape how work feels. When demands stay too high, they start to drain your energy. When resources are missing, it becomes harder to stay engaged. At first, I thought demands and resources balance each other. Just pair high demands with high resources, problem solved. But research shows it's more nuanced than that. Are they strongly correlated? Yes. Do they simply balance each other? Not directly. So you may have the same workload and time pressure, the same person or team, but they will perform differently depending on the resources available. And it will cost them different amount of energy. Or you may have a highly engaged individual flooded with meetings, with no chance to access the resources available to them. And when high demands meet low resources, that's where burnout hits hardest. So if we want to change this, we need to look at both sides of the system. Write down demands and resources in your team and organization. This makes you realize what they are and start thinking what you can do about them. But before we go there, let's see what happens when we add AI to the mix. Because obviously, adding AI should reduce the load, right? Does it? Does it actually reduce the demands? We hoped AI would reduce the effort, and it does. It reduces effort per task. However, you're still responsible for what your agents do. What's more, it actually adds new kinds of demands. More cognitive load, more context switching, and the constant need to adapt. So the system doesn't get simpler, it gets faster. So maybe at least we're getting more resources. And to be fair, we are. We can move faster, automate parts of the work, and get support for cognitive tasks. But other resources don't show up in a stable way anymore, and they are harder to rely on. And we are already starting to see this in research. A study presented this year at ICSE, the top software engineering conference, found that over 20% of developers got no meaningful support for AI adoption. Many learned on their own time, on their own budget. And access to these resources depends heavily on your role, your seniority, and your company. Overall, demands mostly grow, and resources shrink, or remain even at best. This creates a very specific dynamic that we've actually seen many times before. When vacuum cleaners were introduced, they were supposed to save time. And they did. But what happened simultaneously was that expectations changed. Suddenly, cleaning once a week wasn't enough, because now you could do it every day. And we are seeing the same pattern with AI. In practice, efficiency gains quickly turn into expectation inflation. For me, when I realized this, it changed how I think about addressing burnout. At that point, it becomes very hard to keep saying that burnout is just lack of resilience. This is why so many traditional well-being interventions fail. Mindfulness classes, coaching, wellness perks, they can help individuals, but they do not redesign the environment people return to every day. You can't out-resilience a broken system. So this is our step 2. Locate burnout reasons in the system using the job demands and resources model. Now, if we want to address burnout, we need to change the system. And if we want to change the system, there are actually just 2 levers here. We reduce demands and we build resources. That's it. When we write down the demands, it turns out we can reduce many of them without losing productivity. If people spend half their week in status meetings, don't teach them time management. Remove the meetings. If everything is a priority, you don't need better planning tools. You need fewer priorities. If your roadmap assumes everything will go perfectly, the problem is not execution, it's the plan. In most cases, the problem is not how people work, it's how much and how chaotically they are asked to work. Reducing demands is one side of it. How can we build resources that actually make a difference? For example, push decisions to the team level. Agree which decisions don't need approval and stick to it. Block 2 to 3 deep work windows per week. No meetings, no Slack. Treat that as non-negotiable. And please give your teams designated time to explore and test new tools. And treat that time as part of the work, not extra. Make the work more clear, easier to decide, and possible to finish. So this is not about fixing people. It's about designing the environment they work in. And it is designable. We actually have evidence for this. There are studies, especially in high-pressure environments like healthcare, showing that when you redesign how work is structured, burnout goes down and engagement goes up. Which means this is not theoretical. The way we design work really changes how people feel and perform. Is it easy? No. Is it costly? Maybe. So, why should we care? I would love the answer to be simple, because we care about our people. And we shouldn't be building systems designed to burn them out. But that's not what usually drives decisions. Especially in tech, we are obsessed with speed. But there is a hidden tax on that speed, and we are already paying it. Gallup estimates that we are losing up to $9.6 trillion in productivity every year due to low engagement. That's roughly the size of Germany's economy. Just lost every year. When you break it down, that's thousands of dollars per employee. And if you look at what drives that disengagement, chronic stress and burnout are a big part of the picture. And it's not just dollars, it's people. Burnout can develop into serious mental health issues like depression, making people disappear for months, sometimes years. I've been there myself. Is it easy to change how we work? No, but it's worth it. And here's the thing. If most organizations are burning out their people, then not doing that sets you apart. In fact, in an accelerating world, not burning out becomes a competitive advantage. And even if you don't believe in burnout, all the things we are discussing today strongly correlate with engagement. So maybe your organization is more willing to invest in engagement than in burnout prevention. But both require the same thing: redesigning job demands and building resources. So, if you're in a position to change the system, here are 3 things to try. Cut 2 priorities, bring back one-on-ones if they stopped happening, and give your team a buffer week. Let them choose what to work on. That's the system level. But most of you are not redesigning your entire organizations tomorrow. You're going back to your team, your calendar, your next one-on-one. So let's bring this a little closer. Now, I want you to look at your work system for a moment. As I go through these, count silently how many feel true for you, or just notice what feels familiar. These are not personality traits, these are system signals. Does this feel familiar? When the system changes faster than you can update how you work, how you decide, how you lead, you get friction. This is the identity gap. So if this feels confusing, it makes sense. We are all figuring it out in real time. The rules are constantly moving. So we should all remember that there is no ideal leadership, just people trying to lead inside a system that keeps changing. So if we want to impact how these systems work, we don't start with whole system. We start with the closest place where you can actually shift something. Start with your own system. Not because everything is on you, but because this is where you can actually test and see the change. If you want to change the system, you need enough resources to do that. So you start small. You adjust your demands, you unlock yourself some resources, you add a bit more where you can. Make your work system help you stay sharp as the world speeds up. When resources are available, the question becomes, do I really allow myself to use them? Ask for help, delegate a messy project, take a day off and not compensate for it later. Do I allow myself to feel good at work without earning it through exhaustion? Or what blocks me from doing that? Even this conference, you're getting tools, ideas, frameworks, but if you don't create actual space in your work to choose and apply some of them, it just becomes more input. And more input without space turns into overwhelm. Access without space is not a resource. But when you do make space, two things happen. You move a bit further away from burnout, and you signal to others that it's safe to do the same. One way I create that space for myself is with a very simple thought. Try saying it as loudly or as quietly as you want. I can do a little less. For some of you, that just hurt. That's the point. This phrase is something I really use a lot. Not do less in a sense of caring less, but do a little less than the version of me that wants to do everything. And actually, this way, I can achieve more than the version of me that is overwhelmed. Another resource that's often overlooked is your nervous system. If the work system is fast, your nervous system pays the price. And when it's overloaded, everything gets harder. Focus, decisions, collaboration. What helps isn't a big lifestyle change. It's tiny resets you can build into your day, starting right now. You don't even have to wait till you're back at work. First, slow down, on purpose. It's harder than it sounds because everything around you is speeding up. But it can be playful. Walk like a sloth for 3 minutes. Move slower than feels natural between tasks or when you grab your coffee. Talk slowly for fun. Second, tell your brain you're safe. Yawn. Stretch. Breathe. You're basically telling your nervous system it's okay to calm down from high alert. Don't get me started on breathing exercises. If you're curious, come to my office hours and we can try a few together. And third, reduce what's coming in. Less social media, commute in silence, walk without a podcast. One quick note, other parts of life have their own demands and resources too. And if you or someone on your team is neurodivergent or a parent, both come with their own burnout patterns worth knowing about. I'll link research in the follow-up. That was the personal level where you can start today. And that completes our step 3. Now, let's bring it all together. 3 steps to address burnout. 1, map burnout risk for yourself and your team with the 4 dimensions: exhaustion, emotional distance, reduced efficacy, and the identity gap. 2, locate the reasons in the system, not the individual. Burnout is structural. It lives in the system. And AI is accelerating both sides. Demands grow, resources become uneven. 3, apply the 2 levers: reduce demands, build resources. Start where you have influence: your own work, your team's priorities, decisions you can actually change. The goal is not to become perfectly balanced in an accelerating world. It's to build ways of working that still leave us able to think, care, and lead. Because the leaders we need most are the ones who care deeply and build systems that let others care deeply too. And we need you to stay yourself. Good job. Thank you.